Welcome to the debate. Today we are poring over a topic that is part of the morning ritual for billions of people, but which sits at the center of a pretty confusing biochemical contradiction.
It really does.
We are looking at the tension between cardiovascular risk management and, well, global longevity data when it comes to how you brew your coffee. Recent data from 2025 and 2026 reveals a stark conflict. The widespread recommendation to use paper filters to lower cholesterol might be a necessary health intervention, or it might be a reductionist view that overlooks the benefits of traditional brewing.
And it's a fascinating subject because it really forces us to ask if we are, over-engineering our own diet. We're drawing on the article How Coffee Raises Our Cholesterol by Tash Jamieson, which was reviewed by researchers at Oxford alongside new 2026 data on global consumption. The central inquiry is simple, but I think very divisive. Is the paper filter a lifesaver, or is it sanitizing our food supply to the point where we lose the benefits?
I have to state my position clearly from the outset. For me, the biochemical evidence is just undeniable. Unfiltered coffee contains potent cholesterol-raising agents that pose a specific, measurable risk to cardiovascular health. In my view, paper filtration isn't just a preference. It's a superior choice for modern health optimization. I mean, we have the technology to make a safer product, and refusing to use it appeals to a kind of naturalistic fallacy that can actually hurt you.
And I come at it from a different way. I believe that view is just too narrow. When we look at historical data from blue zones and the complex bioactive profile of the coffee bean, suggesting we strip mine our coffee with paper filters ignores the fact that removing these compounds might also remove specific longevity benefits. Not to mention the environmental costs, which, we often conveniently ignore in the pursuit of these perfect health metrics.
Then let's get into the position statements, because the mechanism here is not vague at all. It is incredibly specific. Coffee beans contain diterpenes. Specifically, we're talking about cafestol and cahuel. Now, these aren't just minor trace elements. The source material describes cafestol as, and I'm quoting, the most potent cholesterol-elevating compound known in the human diet.
That is a very strong claim.
It is a factual claim supported by the literature. The data shows that milligram for milligram, cafestol raises LDL cholesterol, that's the bad cholesterol, more than bacon fat or butter. This isn't just about adding fat to the system, it's about how the body processes it. And here is the kicker. A major Norwegian study of over 21,000 participants showed that drinking 6 or more cups of unfiltered coffee daily increased LDL cholesterol by 8 to 12 milligrams per deciliter.
I'm familiar with the Norwegian study.
Then you know the implications. If you are genetically predispositioned to high cholesterol, like the author Tash Jamieson mentioned regarding her own mother, this isn't trivial. The paper filter acts as a technological intervention. It captures over 95% of these oils. It protects your lipid metabolism while retaining the caffeine. If you care about your heart data, switching to a filtered brew is a critical, non-medicinal intervention. It is the digestive firewall we need.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that it's that black and white. I acknowledge the lipid data. I'm not disputing that cafestol raises LDL, but I am challenging the conclusion that filtered is best across the board. You are focused on one metric, LDL, but let's look at the longevity paradox. Look at Icaria, Greece. It's a famous blue zone. The residents there have some of the highest rates of longevity in the world. They consume boiled, unfiltered Greek coffee daily. They're drinking the very sludge you claim is dangerous, yet they have excellent endothelial function and live into their 90s.
But relying on Icaria is dangerous because it ignores the confounding variables of their entire lifestyle.
Perhaps, but it suggests the coffee isn't the assassin you're making it out to be. The same oils you are calling villains, the diterpenes, are part of the bean's natural defense system. They have anti-inflammatory and even anti-cancer properties. My thesis is that demonizing unfiltered coffee relies on a single metric while ignoring holistic health outcomes. The danger is entirely dose-dependent and, I think, likely exaggerated for the average moderate drinker. We are trying to sanitize a complex agricultural product, and I think we're losing something in the process.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on the mechanism. You mentioned dose-dependent, but we need to understand why cafestol is so dangerous. It's not just that it's a fat. it specifically downregulates the LDL receptors in the liver.
Explain that.
Your liver has receptors that act like little catcher's mitts, grabbing LDL cholesterol out of the bloodstream to break it down. Cafestol binds to a nuclear receptor, specifically FXR and PXR, which essentially tells the liver, we have enough cholesterol, shut down the catcher's mitts. It blinds the liver, so your body stops cleaning its own blood. That is a mechanical failure induced by the coffee oil.
That is a fascinating mechanism, I grant you, but again, you're looking at the molecular level and ignoring the organism level. The body has homeostatic loops.
Loops that broken by high doses. And let's look at the concentration numbers, because they are stark. French press coffee contains about 3.5 milligrams of cafestol per cup. Scandinavian boiled coffee, which is what was largely used in that Norwegian study, has about 7.2 milligrams per cup. Turkish coffee is around 5.3 milligrams. Now compare that to a paper-filtered drip coffee, which has negligible amounts.
But 3.5 milligrams in a French press cup. That doesn't sound like a lethal dose compared to the 7.2 in the boiled coffee.
It accumulates. The data indicates that just 3 cups of French press daily can push a person's cholesterol from a healthy range, let's say under 99, to a high range of 105 within a single year. That is a silent escalation. You don't feel your cholesterol rising. It's invisible until the blood work comes back.
I think you're extrapolating too aggressively. You're taking the Norwegian data, which, let's be honest, involved people drinking massive amounts of boiled coffee in a cold climate, and applying it to the modern casual drinker.
I'm not convinced by that line of reasoning because the modern drinker is consuming coffee in ways that mimic those volume levels, just differently.
That brings us to the espresso exception, which I think is where your argument starts to leak. Espresso is technically unfiltered. It uses a metal portafilter, not paper. So by your definition, it should be dangerous. But because of the speed of extraction, it's a pressurized blast of water, not a long soak. An espresso shot only contains about 1 milligram of cafestol.
Is that really an exception, or is it just a smaller dose of poison?
It is a significant difference. The risk is not binary, it's about volume. The danger zone cited in the studies, the 8 to 12-point rise in LDL, often requires 5 or more cups a day. For the moderate drinker having a morning French press and maybe an espresso after lunch, the body can generally handle that lipid load. We aren't all drinking 3 liters of boiled coffee like 19th century Norwegian lumberjacks.
But look at the modern coffee shop menu. Who drinks just one shot? If you walk into a coffee shop today and order a grande or venti latte, you are not getting a single Italian espresso. You are getting a baseline of 3, sometimes 4 shots.
Sure, if you're drinking buckets of milk with coffee flavoring.
Even without the milk, the flat white, the cortado, the Americano, these are multi-shot beverages. If you have a triple shot latte in the morning and an Americano in the afternoon, you have easily ingested 5 to 6 milligrams of cafestol. You are right back up to the French press levels or even the Scandinavian boiled levels. The accumulation is what matters.
But there's a qualitative difference in the extraction. You're ignoring the crema.
The crema is the oil. That golden foam on top of an espresso shot is an emulsion of CO2 and oils, specifically cafestol and cahool. When you drink espresso, you are drinking a concentrated dose of these diterpenes.
And that crema is also where the flavor and the antioxidants are most concentrated. This is my point about reductionism. You want to skim off the crema, filter out the sludge, and drink brown caffeine water. But the interplay of those lipids with the polyphenols might be exactly why coffee is linked to liver health and reduced diabetes risk in other studies.
Or the diabetes benefit comes from the chlorogenic acid, which passes through the paper filter just fine, while the cholesterol risk comes from the cafestol, which the filter catches. Why take the package deal when you can separate the benefit from the risk?
Because separating the benefit usually means processing the life out of the food. This brings me to the bioavailability argument. We are taking a nutrient-dense bean and filtering it. If you look at the nutritional breakdown of a coffee bean versus, say, a pinto bean, they are both agricultural seeds. They are rich in fiber, antioxidants, and proteins. If we were talking about pinto beans, we would never say, boil them, throw away the bean, and strain the water through paper. We would eat the bean. Why is the coffee bean treated as toxic waste?
Because, quite literally, the source material warns that it is toxic in that form. The human digestive system is not designed to break down the complex fibers in coffee grounds like soil microbes can. You cannot simply consume coffee grounds like you would brown rice.
I'm not suggesting we eat a bowl of grounds for breakfast. I'm saying that our extraction method should be as efficient as possible.
But efficient at what cost? The source material explicitly warns against consuming grounds. First, there is the caffeine toxicity issue. Eating just 4.5 tablespoons of grounds exceeds the safe 400 milligram caffeine limit. You could end up in the hospital. But more importantly for our debate, when you swallow the grounds, even the fine silt at the bottom of a French press, you are bypassing any filtration. You are putting the factory that produces the cholesterol-raising agent directly into your gut.
That is hyperbole. A little sediment at the bottom of the cup is not eating the bean.
It is eating the most potent part of the bean. That sludge is super concentrated cafestol. The paper filter is a safety mechanism. It's a firewall.
It's a blunt instrument. And this obsession with the paper firewall creates a massive downstream problem. You are prioritizing a marginal decrease in LDL over a massive increase in environmental waste.
I hardly think managing heart disease is marginal.
Compared to the planetary scale, let's look at the math. If you're a daily drinker, that's 365 filters a year. If you have a household of 2, over 700. That is a mountain of bleached paper pulp saturated in coffee oils, often thrown into plastic trash bags that end up in landfills where they release methane.
Most filters are compostable now.
But are they composted? In reality, most people toss them in the trash. A French press or an espresso portafilter is a zero-waste tool. It's a metal screen. It lasts a lifetime. In 2026, is it ethical to recommend a disposable, single-use product as the global standard for health? You are advocating for billions of trees to be processed into paper just to lower your cholesterol by 8 points.
I think health optimization often requires trade-offs. And frankly, the paper filter does more than just trap cholesterol. We are seeing emerging concerns in 2026 about microplastics in water supplies.
Oh, come on. Microplastics?
It is a valid concern. Tap water, even filtered tap water, is increasingly contaminated with nanoplastics. Paper filters act as a physical barrier that a metal mesh filter simply cannot provide. The metal mesh is too coarse. The plastics pass right through. So, with a paper filter, you are protecting your lipid metabolism from cafestol and your body from microplastics.
That sounds like a post hoc justification. You are grasping for reasons to justify the waste. The environmental math doesn't work out. You're comparing the microscopic risk of trace plastics against the guaranteed macro-scale waste of billions of bleached paper filters rotting in landfills.
Benefit reducing the risk of heart failure and hypertension associated with filtered coffee outweighs the waste, which can be mitigated if people actually compost. We shouldn't make health policy based on people being too lazy to compost.
We should make health policy based on reality. And the reality is that we are creating a sanitized industrial relationship with our food. This brings me back to the role of tradition versus modern science. We are trying to outsmart evolution.
I would argue we are using science to understand evolution. Evolution didn't design us to live to 90 while sitting at desks eating saturated fats.
But look at the Greek and Turkish method again. I want to drill down on why that works for them. These methods involve boiling the ground. Science in 2016 is acknowledging that optimal is personalized. For someone with low cholesterol but high systemic inflammation, the antioxidant load of unfiltered coffee might be superior.
How so?
Boiling extracts more polyphenols. The longer contact time and the higher temperature stability of boiling, like in the Greek method, pulls out different compounds in a quick pour-over. If I am an oxidative stress fighter, I want that sludge. I want those oils because they are anti-inflammatory. By filtering it, you are throwing away the medicine because you're scared of the side effect.
But at what cost? That is always my question. You are getting more polyphenols, sure, but you are packaging them with a potent cholesterol-raising agent. It's like eating a salad
that has been drenched in bacon grease. Yes, the lettuce is good for you, but the delivery mechanism is compromising your cardiovascular system.
I think that bacon grease analogy is flawed. Bacon fat is saturated animal fat. Cafestol is a plant diterpene. It mimics the effect on the liver, yes, but it doesn't have the same inflammatory profile as processed meat. In fact, some studies show cafestol has anti-diabetic properties.
But the liver doesn't distinguish between the source when the receptors are blocked. If the LDL isn't cleared, it oxidizes in the arteries. That is the pathology of heart disease. It doesn't matter if the blockage came from a plant or a pig.
For the general population, perhaps. But what about the personalized approach? If I check my blood work and my LDL is 80, pristine, why should I be forced to use a paper filter? I can handle the French press, I can handle the Cafestol, I get the richer mouthfeel, the full flavor profile, and the zero waste benefit. You are prescribing a blanket medication, the paper filter, for a patient who isn't sick.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective on hidden risk. The advocate position is about risk management for the aggregate. Most people do not check their LDL every month. Most people in the West already have compromised diets. To suggest that unfiltered is fine because of a few people in Greece ignores the reality of modern metabolic health. The easy fix of a paper filter clears out the villain, the cafestol, while keeping the antioxidants. It is a low-cost insurance policy.
And I maintain that the villain might be a misunderstood hero in the right context. You are essentially arguing for a nanny state approach to brewing. You want to child-proof the coffee pot.
I want to cholesterol-proof the population. And frankly, even with decaf, this matters.
That is true. Decaf isn't safe from this.
Exactly. The source material notes that unfiltered decaf still contains cafestol and CaHOL. In fact, some studies found unfiltered decaf drinkers had higher cholesterol than regular drinkers.
Why is that?
It's likely because decaf beans are often Robusta or specific Arabica strains selected for richer oils to make up for the flavor loss during the decaffeination process. So, if you are drinking decaf French press thinking you are being heart healthy because there's no caffeine, you might actually be doing more damage to your lipids than if you drank a regular filtered coffee.
That is a fair warning on decaf. But it reinforces my point about the bean itself. The oil is where the flavor lives. When you filter it, you are drinking a different beverage. You are drinking a tea made from coffee rather than an emulsion of the coffee bean.
A tea that saves your arteries?
Or a tea that leaves you unsatisfied and reaching for a donut to get that mouthfeel back.
That's a behavioral argument, not a biochemical one.
Health is behavioral. You can't separate the biochemistry from the psychology of satisfaction. If the coffee satisfies you, you might eat less garbage later. If you drink thin, watery, filtered coffee, you might crave fat elsewhere.
I'm not convinced by that. That sounds like rationalization for bad habits. But look, I think we have drilled down on the mechanisms. We agree that the oils are there. We agree they raise LDL via receptor downregulation. We disagree on whether that is an acceptable trade-off for the other benefits and the environmental impact.
I agree. It is decision time.
From my perspective, the evidence provided by Tosh Jameson and the Oxford reviewers is just difficult to ignore. While coffee is generally a healthy beverage, a superfood even, the preparation is the poison or the cure. For those tracking heart health, which should be everyone over 30, the evidence is clear. The paper filter is a non-negotiable shield against cafestol. It prevents a silent, creeping rise in LDL cholesterol that could undermine all your other health efforts. And I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that it's non-negotiable. I conclude that coffee is more than just a delivery system for caffeine or a cholesterol risk. It is a complex agricultural product with a history. While heavy users, those drinking 5 or 6 cups a day, should absolutely be wary of unfiltered methods, moderate consumption of French press or espresso is historically consistent with a long, healthy life, as we see in the blue zones. It is also environmentally superior.
I'm not convinced that history protects us from modern biology, but I appreciate the rigor of your defense.
That's a compelling argument, but have you considered that perhaps the stress of worrying about your coffee filter is raising your blood pressure more than the coffee itself?
That is a risk I am willing to take, but I will stick to my pour-over, thank you very much.
And I will stick to my French press, at least on the weekends. The final reflection here is that health is not a single metric.
One must choose their brew based on whether they are fighting cholesterol, seeking maximum antioxidants, or trying to minimize environmental waste.
Exactly. There is always more to explore in the material, and the debate continues.
Thank you for listening to the debate.
Goodbye.